From the moment I touched down on the couch, she was already trying to do the bilateral stimulation. She was trying to show me her technique. I showed her a technique. It's called the Houdini. I left that session as fast as possible. I disappeared and I was never seen again. Hey everyone, welcome to the weekly consultation. I am your in-house trauma specialist, David Archer. I'm an EMDR therapy trainer and rhythm and processing strategies developer, specialized in complex trauma and all of that, right? And so what I'd like to talk about today is a very special topic. And this is something that's helpful whether you're an EMDR therapist or you use any other modality, so stay tuned. Let me tell you a story. After I was trained as an EMDR therapist, I was in Montreal, Canada, and I was like, you know what? I want to know what it's like to be a client. I want to go and get a therapy session by a trained therapist. In my first session with this therapist, this was not the best therapist. She was much older than me, so I thought that maybe she might be very experienced. But from the moment I touched down on the couch, she was already trying to do the bilateral stimulation. At that point, she was trying to show me her technique. I showed her a technique. It's called the Houdini. I left that session as fast as possible. I disappeared and I was never seen again by that specific therapist. A therapist doesn't like when a client is going to walk out of the session, but in that specific situation, I knew that I needed to put my safety first. We are not to start trauma processing the moment that the client walks into the door. After we say hello, you might want to say, how was your day? You might want to say, can I get you a cup of water, some coffee or something like that? But we don't jump into going in the depths of suffering right after we just met someone. So the reason why I'm explaining this is because today I'll be talking about the 3-phase model that is applicable to EMDR therapy and really any other situation where complex trauma is going to be involved. And so we're going to talk about the 3 steps. These are the 3 phases. So I believe Pierre Janet spoke about this. I believe that Judith Herman also spoke about this in 1992. And also Vanderhart and colleagues also discussed it. But this is and it's recommended by ISSSTD as well. This is a way that we can help people to do their trauma therapy in a way that is contained and in a way that takes into account the diversity of part systems that are within an individual. So, stabilization, trauma processing, and integration. We're going to break it down. Stabilization. This is what the therapist should have done. After saying hello, they do an intake, they get their questions, I answer the questions, everything is good. Then stabilization is a lot about me as a client being safe in the present moment. It's about me also learning methods to manage my daily stresses, reducing actions that are going to get in the way of therapy progressing, maybe learning some visualizations, learning some mindfulness techniques, some ego strengthening techniques, and also making it so that all parts of me, so like if I feel as if there's an emotional part that is stuck within suffering as a child, and so then certain triggers might make me get into temper tantrums or might make me feel a specific way, we want to make sure that that child can feel safe in the session. We want to make sure that all parts of me, both dissociative and non-dissociative parts, are getting along. And then after that, after we are sure that the client knows that they can feel okay in their body, that the client is okay in some form of co-regulation with another being, and also that they have sufficient skills and techniques and we've assessed for dissociation, then we get into trauma treatment. Trauma treatment is phase 2. What happens in phase 2? That's where the magic happens. When you think about EMDR therapy, that's where phase 4 of EMDR therapy is. So the desensitization of EMDR in EMDR therapies protocol, but phase 2 in the 3-phase protocol for complex trauma treatment, that's where we're going to look at the trauma history. That's when we're going to do the bilateral stimulation and EMDR therapy. That's where we're processing the trauma. That's where we're getting that good work going. That can usually be one of the most challenging parts of therapy, because sometimes it gets a little rough before it gets a little better. Okay, and sometimes that's where the big feelings will start to come up in session. And most times, because you did your proper stabilization, instead of things being unplanned and explosive as it can be, it's much more titrated, it's much more balanced, and it's much more, um, it's something that is done with the therapist and client working together. So for me, when I'm using the rhythm and processing strategies to conceptualize this, I already have a list of trauma targets. The client already is stabilized. They're going to choose what is the specific event they'd like to work on that specific day, and then we deal with it. And then one by one, as we clear those trauma targets, what usually happens is we start to see harmony between different parts of ourselves. We get the ability to rescue parts of ourselves that they may be stuck in the past. We're able to help them and do a form of self-parenting, where this younger version of ourselves can now feel accompanied in the present and now feel safe, and that all parts of the self can be at peace. We want to make peace with our memories of the past, so we're not overwhelmed by them and we're not drawn into the past memories, and we can instead be comfortable with all parts of ourselves and eventually form a coherent narrative of our lives as best as possible. The third phase is integration. Okay, we are not asking clients to bring all their parts in one place. We're not asking the person with dissociative identity disorder to skip the steps and just to integrate because the therapist feels good about it. No, we're going to ask the client system what it is that works best. Some parts might want to integrate, and some parts might want to keep their distance, and that's perfectly fine. Every system is unique. But when I think about integration, I'm thinking about the client being able to feel at peace with themselves in time and space. So, had if it were that I stayed with that actual therapist and they were able to address some of my trauma relating to experiences of racial trauma, relating to experiences of difficulty in the workplace, in childhood, and all of those kinds of things, then at that point, once I was able to make a coherent narrative, and once I've cleared like some of the big bad final boss dungeon dragon traumas, at that point, then it might be safer to start to think, okay, well, maybe there's some limiting beliefs about reintegrating into relationships with different types of people. So after we clear the trauma targets, then after it's working on interpersonal things, then it's like kind of like restoring trust between the different parts of oneself, making it so that now they can maybe trust this part of themselves with intimacy, and maybe they can then learn to trust others with intimacy, or maybe they are just reestablishing a proper line of communication with one of their parts so that they can reestablish proper lines of communication with the parts of other people. But we want to be able to make peace with ourselves in time and space. And we also want to make sure that we are utilizing mental actions that allow us to be in the present moment without fear. By this time, we have reduced the actions that have been hindering us from engaging with therapy. By this time, we have probably dealt with some of the big, bad, difficult trauma targets. And in the third phase, that's when it's about reintegrating and feeling okay with ourselves in relationship to other people. However, I know I just told you these three phases, but there may be some times where there's stabilization, then you process a trauma. Something just happened in their life, a divorce, a breakup. We might need to stabilize again. Or, we're doing trauma treatment and then we get to integration and then again, something unexpected happens. Oh, wait, it's because this one just started to emerge, that the dissociative barrier is no longer there. Oh, I just remembered this trauma. I can't believe I forgot this to tell you this thing in the first place. Well, guess what? It's a three-phase thing, but it's okay. Sometimes we might go back to stabilization. Sometimes we might go back to trauma treatment. Sometimes after completing integration, maybe a year later, person still needs some therapy. And then they come and they check me out, and just like an oil change, we get them fixed up, ready to go, ready to rev their engine. Okay. Um, I'm not a car guy, but I'm just assuming that's a cool thing to say. Okay. Anyways, all of that just to say, this is the three-phase model. When we're working with complex trauma, working with complex racial trauma, borderline personality, especially specifically personality disorders that also have that trauma element linked with it. I would just say for any of my cases where they've been, desperately trying to find ways of helping themselves, been after one therapist and another therapist and another therapist, stabilization, trauma treatment, integration. And that's it. This has been your weekly consultation and where I just talk about mental health. If you have any topics you'd like for me to cover, let me know. Go to archertherapy.com and just drop a contact and let me know. I want to make sure that the public is demystified about complex trauma, dissociation, racial trauma, and that we understand the importance of healing ourselves and helping our society to get better. So that's it for today. Many blessings, take good care, and peace.